one key is the way that you measure debt. So the usual measure of debt has U.S. government debt, the publicly held debt, at about 75% of GDP, and increasing dramatically. So it's going to cross 100%. And then people say, well, you know, this is just like Greece. And then you look at the size of the deficit and compare that to GDP, it's just like Greece. Well, I'm afraid not. Okay, to compare to Greece is, I think, inappropriate for multiple reasons. And the most obvious reason is that we have control over our currency. We have a floating currency, or the US dollar. And Greece is in basically a peg system to the euro. They cannot do anything about their obligations. They cannot depreciate their currency because they are hooked into a fixed currency. So in that sense, the US is in a much stronger condition. We can always fulfill our debt by printing money. It's not something you want to do, but we can do that. In addition, even if Greece was a floating currency and we resurrected the drachma, which might be resurrected, it's a totally different story, the US dollar and the drachma, because the US dollar is a reserve currency, de facto. Okay, so it might not be in 20 years, but given that it is today, again, we don't need to worry about that debt because there's always the option of printing. Okay, it's a last resort option, right, because you don't want that to cause inflation directly. So I've also said that we need to be careful the way that we count the debt. So if you include the public debt, so the US government debt held by the public, and then you kind of go a level lower because there's a lot of government debt held by kind of government institutions. Then you count corporate debt, you count consumer debt. You put that all together, you get about 350% of GDP. And if you look at that through time, there's been no point in the last at least 80 years where anything is looked close to 350%. Okay, so we are levered big time. And I think that that is going to be a problem. Now, some people might say, well, you know, what's the big deal? Because the usual argument with all that debt is that it crowds out corporations and causes rates to go up. And look at the rates. Rates are really low. And it's true. Right now, there's no crowding out directly. But we talked about the indirect crowding out already. The banks, what are they doing? They're investing in treasuries. They've got excess reserves. They're not making loans to corporations. So there's a crowding out almost immediately right now, even though you don't see it in interest rates. And the other thing is that these obligations are for many years. There's no way we can pay off all the government debt in 1 year. So this is a multi-year thing, and while you might not see the obvious effect of crowding out today, you will see that effect in the future. And that's the reason that once debt gets sufficiently high, there's very clean empirical evidence that shows that the rate of growth in your economy goes down. Okay, so that's going to cost us growth unless we get that debt reduced. So I think that it is a serious problem, and it's a problem that's going to take multiple years to actually fix. And there's many ways to fix, and some of the fixes are not really fixes. So you need to be careful. You can imagine having a policy where you punitively increase taxes across the board. That's not going to be a fix. That's just going to basically dig the grave for us. Okay, so you have to be very careful as to how you deal with this. And there's certain things that I think that could be done that are kind of low risk that don't risk making things worse.